Hello, majority of BC. We're coming to you with a very special episode from our video-equipped studio in downtown Vancouver. Our guest this week is Sam Sullivan. Sam is one of the biggest thought leaders in BC politics. I really respect Sam because when he joined the BC Liberal leadership race in 2017, he decided right out of the gate that he was going to make his campaign about big ideas and policies. Sam also has a really inspiring story about how he overcame adversity when he was young and overcame his disability. I hope that you come away from this episode feeling intellectually engaged and as inspired as I have after the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Majority of BC. This is BC's premier podcast for everything BC politics, from the events to policies to issues. I'm Jordan Schroeder. With me, as always, the very tan Ryan Pinio.
Hello, everybody.
And our guest this week is a former BC Liberal leadership contender, former mayor of Vancouver, current MLA for Vancouver Falls Creek, and the founder of the Disability Foundation. Welcome to Majority of BC, Sam Sullivan.
You make me sound like a has-been.
Hey, Vancouver Falls Creek, that was not an easy riding to win. You are still very much in the game, my friend.
Thank you.
What was the margin of victory on that again?
Well, 500 votes, but it did go to a recount.
Yeah, that's a tight one. I really wanted to start with the leadership, though, because I'll say this right off the top. I'm a huge fan. I became a huge fan from the first video that you launched for the leadership race, where you basically released like a big laundry list of things that you wanted to focus on, of big ideas. And part of it was the fact that I really liked all the ideas and the policies you were putting forward. But another part of it was just having somebody who is so clearly committed to making this about ideas. Like, you just came out the gate and you said, this is what we're going to talk about, and we're not going to do like cheap political shots or anything. And it's really cool. Most people don't do politics like that. So what went into that decision for you?
Well, I'm a good soldier, and I believe in being a team player. But when I heard that really there's only one time in the life of a political party where there's no party line, there's no way to offend anybody or to cause, somebody to lose an election or whatever, it's when you're in a leadership contest, and basically you're fighting for the heart of the party, and there are no rules. And I said, I can't miss this opportunity. So I kind of, whatever I had, bottled up inside me for 4 years, I just let her loose. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no kidding. And that is really true.
It was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. And you can steer the party a lot when you're the leader, or, when there is no leader.
Yeah.
Do you think really that a party changes that much from leader to leader?
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. There has to be a period, they have to really make sure that they get the support and the confidence of the caucus. But I think once the caucus is on board, they give the leader a lot of room, and that's what I believe we need to do. But, I was worried that we were going to have a leadership event with a lot of pablum, and I said, I'm going to make sure we have real ideas.
Sorry, with a lot of what?
Pablum. I know you're too young for that kind of stuff. That's what babies used to eat when, for old people like me. So don't make me feel so old. God, do I have to actually...
It's the second time you've done that, Jordan.
Google it. Yeah. No, so and then eventually I said, I think I'm going to be a kind of a disruptive influence in this. So I basically made the decision that, first of all, my main goal, I had to lay out the goals. My main goal was not to win. So I said, if I do win, I am going to ask for a recount. This is, please don't make me do this job. This is not an easy job. So I also said, you know what, I'm not going to sell a single membership, and I'm not going to make a single phone call. I'm just going to let loose with some good ideas. And I'm going to maybe, I remembered with the HST, they said, you can't bring in the HST. You never talked about it. And I said, so that's the rule, eh? So if you don't talk about it, you can't do it. Well, I'm going to make sure I talk about everything. that I'd ever like to do.
Right.
Oh, you're
And-
referring to the BC Liberals before they didn't talk about the HST before they got elected, and then people said they aren't allowed to do it.
Yeah. So I'm going to make sure that I talk about probably everything that I ever want to do, So, nobody can say we didn't talk about this. So I took a whole bunch of pretty toxic stuff. And I had this idea that maybe if all these toxic ideas, they have a lot of people against them, but they have a small group that supports each one of them. And you probably could, if you put enough toxic ideas, link a whole bunch of, supporters, and maybe, you might make an impression. But I also wanted to show the other leaders, that you could talk about stuff and survive. And if they could see me speaking publicly, videos and everything, about some pretty tough ideas and surviving.
I think I speak for a lot of party members when I say we appreciated that, because it's not every day that ideas that people in Prince George hear their ideas talked about in Victoria, or people in anywhere, right, hear their ideas talked about in Victoria, or even mused about. And I think that you touched on a lot of ideas that members, across a really wide diaspora would appreciate. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, I had a number of leadership candidates come to me and ask for my endorsement, because I did make this statement that, hey, if I don't think I'm going to win, I'll probably endorse somebody.
Right.
And so quite a number came and asked me for an endorsement. I said, I don't think by the time I'm finished this, you're even going to want to admit you know me. I don't think you want my endorsement. I'll let this thing go through and you see what I say, and then you can ask me for my endorsement. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also you said that the ideas can be toxic and that a lot of them don't have a huge groundswell of support yet. But I think part of that's just that a lot of people don't talk about them or haven't thought about them yet. And so you said that you weren't in the leadership contest to win it. It's kind of like you were just there to spark the conversation in a big way, like a stick of dynamite into the rock, and you blew up the standard political discourse. And that does a lot for taking these ideas that have minimal support now and making them the ideas of the future, because sometimes it just takes people a lot of time to accept these ideas. I remember last year I was the Prime Minister at University's Model Parliament. Pretty big deal.
Congratulations.
But I had put forward this piece of legislation to repeal the Canada Health Act. And the Canada Health Act, for everybody listening, doesn't actually create universal health care. It just creates this transfer payment system. And so what the act was doing was to take the funding for provincial health care, which is a provincial responsibility, take it away from the federal government, and then I decrease taxes at the federal level, the GST, so that the provinces could just raise the PST on their end and fully fund healthcare from their own end. And that would give them more room to innovate, because currently the Canada Health Act is held above the provinces' heads all the time, and the feds will say that they'll cut healthcare funding if the provinces try to innovate. So anyways, I had to explain this to people, but every time I would talk to people, they would just start out with the conception that I was repealing healthcare in Canada. And when I would get to talk to them one-on-one outside the chambers, they would actually be really receptive to what I was talking about, and they'd follow my arguments about why it makes sense. We'll have exactly the net same amount of funding for healthcare in Canada. And at the end of our discussion, I'd say, okay, so will you support the bill? No, I still think I can't. I just realized that you can't convince people to repeal the Canada Health Act in a day. So it takes some time.
No, but many of the candidates, they came to me and they said, no matter what corner of the province we're in, we always get this small knot of people coming up to us and say, Sam Sullivan represents what I think, and there's, so I did make an impression somewhere, and at least in every area, there were a few people that said, that's where I want to go.
Yeah. So why not do both then? So you wanted to start up the conversation, but why not also do something where you're selling memberships as well and taking a shot at the leadership?
Well, at that point, I decided I didn't want to make the other candidates feel like I was a threat. I thought it was more important for them to feel open to my suggestions. I got people saying to me, "Oh no, it's going to be very bad for you because you're going to lose big time, and it will." And I say, "Yeah, good, yeah." And they say, "But it will be humiliating." I said, "God, I've had enough humiliation. It doesn't bother me." And anyways, when I do want to do a membership, effort, I've taken on the biggest machine, Christy Clark, and won. Mm-hmm. So I know how to do that.
Right.
I've already got that on my belt. But this is not about that. This is about ideas. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm a threat. I want them to be open to these ideas, and so I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Did you do the NPA race a little differently? So when you ran for mayor of Vancouver?
Oh yeah, that was knock them down, both elbows out. That was fun too.
Yeah. Was one more fun than the other?
They were both fun in their own ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always try to have fun when you're in this business.
It's a very good political answer from a veteran
Absolutely.
Vancouver politician. The 38th mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Well, I guess we have a new mayor. Would you give him any advice?
Well, the mayor, the mayor is really nothing. The mayor is the person who cuts ribbons and chairs council meetings. The person who is, or the government, is anyone that can deliver 6 votes consistently.
Right.
So we have a weak mayor system, which nobody seems to know. Very few people, people come up to me and say, "I wonder what the mayor is going to do about housing." What would the mayor possibly do about housing? He can't deliver 6 votes.
Right.
So he's like the queen. Head of state in a way. So you got to find out who's the prime minister, and that has not manifested itself yet. Because
Do you have any predictions?
Well, it should be the NPA. The NPA hasn't quite figured out that they're the government. They have 5 votes. They only need 1 more. And I've told them they need to go out formally, do an RFP. Who wants to be in the government? You need one more person. And, tell us what you want. And they can do an alliance. And if they can deliver 6 votes on a consistent basis, they are the government.
So almost like what happened in Victoria then.
Yeah.
In
No,
some
this
respects.
is a remarkable thing. The NPA is in such a good position because if they lose a confidence vote, the government doesn't end. They just get to do it again, So
Right.
it's like it's the best imaginable system, and you can do a 90-day or 30-day cancellation clause. If you don't, want to be part of the government, we'll go to the next person. I think that actually the Green Party should be allied to the NPA because then you got an extra 2 votes. Two caucus members can go rogue and you still win.
Right.
And also, as I've been trying to tell people, is that the Green Party is the new urban conservative party. They are very much the free market. They have more urban values, but they don't believe in big government. They believe in innovation. They believe in free market. They have become the urban conservative party. And, we see that in my own election. A lot of BC Liberals defected to the Greens. And it's mostly the young techie types, tech-enabled, I call them. And they have really defected. They consider that the BC Liberal Party is the rural conservative party. So,
Yeah.
we certainly have a strong gravitational pull. You can't help, can't avoid that in a caucus when, you do have a strong contingency of people from rural areas. You will get that impression at least.
Right.
So
is that like a failure on our part, you think, to lose the image of the coalition that we used to have?
Well, it certainly is there. I mean, we do have, a good coalition, but it's the impression, and I think it has something to do with the way we conducted ourselves in the last election. you know this concept that every general always fights their last battle, you know. So in the 2013 election, we had the BC Conservatives breathing down our neck. So we put on the hard hat, got out the budget, and fought on the right, you know. And 2017 comes along, and they said, gee, that worked out very well last time. Let's try that again, you know. And there was nobody on our right, you know. So why were we getting our hard hats on and, you know, all the budgets and everything and fighting on the right? In fact...
Sitting on the surplus.
Sitting
on the surplus.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we should have recognized where the threat was, which was on our left, and I think most people were saying at that point that the Green Party is the sort of the flaky NDP, you know. And I said, no. There's really two parts to the Green Party. There's the sort of the old hippies. And then there's the young techies, and there's a real coalition there, and it's a very unstable coalition. And in the urban areas, in fact, the Green Party has become the party of the young techies. And we are in a huge risk of losing people to the Greens. And, you know, many of their values are urban, when you would call that maybe left. For some people would call it left, but I don't really think that's an adequate way to describe it.
So what would you have done personally? Put yourself in the leadership chair, and you've obviously got your free market values. You want to win the election. What practical stuff would you have done?
Well, I love what we did with the rural areas and saying, you know, nobody should tell you how to run your economy. You know, nobody should tell you what values, you know, to uphold. You know, you guys know the way, you know, that works in your area, but we also need to look at urban issues and to be much more aware and responsive. You know, house prices, big issue. I mean, you know, I was trying to push for supply, you know, angles, but, you know, daycare, transit, you know.
Uber,
you know, these kinds of things. This is what, the young techies. You know, if that's really the urban conservative party is the Green Party, then that's a big deal for them.
Yeah.
And here we are trying to be a center of innovation and technology, and you can't get it right.
Well, I was saying to somebody the other day that just in the summer alone, July and August, between nights I would do something here and then go out with friends or whatever and take a taxi home. Just the amount, if you think that an Uber on average is about half price of a taxi in most jurisdictions that they roll it out, I probably would have saved somewhere in the range of $200 to $400 this summer, and that's post-tax money too, right? So,
And it doesn't cost a dime of tax money.
exactly. You know, it's safer. You know, somebody's there right away. I mean, downtown tonight, it's going to be snowing probably later tonight. It's Friday night right now at about, what time is it, 7?
Yeah.
Something? It's about 7 o'clock. I think it's forecasted wet snow is going to start around 10:30 or 11. And I guarantee you, as soon as the flakes fall, there's going to be people standing, waiting for cabs, and people getting in and, oh, you're too far away, or you're not paying cash.
Yeah, exactly,
That's a new one now, is you're not paying cash.
Not paying up front.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, you know? I mean, that's not working for me. If you look at, you know, Horgan's slogan, that's not working for me.
Yeah, so a lot of young people are saying the government and the main parties don't represent me.
Yeah.
You know, so they defect to this new, you know, something new, and I think that's really hurt us.
Yeah, the allure of new is kind of always there. I don't think there's been an election really where one party hasn't latched onto like the slogan of change or just the word change.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it is about the word change that always gets like this solid contingent of disaffected people with the current government. The current government might not even be bad, but there's people you talk to and they'll just say, I think it's time for change right now.
Yeah.
Even when your province or your country or your city is doing really well. I don't know what it is about that.
Well, one of my favorite philosophers, Joseph Schumpeter, you know, he I think he nailed it with the idea that elections are about saying the people that you don't want to run your government. You know, it's saying no to you either keep the people you got or you get rid of them, and then that leaves you whoever is the alternative.
Sorry, I'm not quite understanding that. So
It's change. Just, you know, that really is the power of the voter is change, and you got to hope that whoever is that change represents something good.
Oh, yes.
Well, looking at it that way, what do you think the voters in Nanaimo are thinking right now?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. So this Tony Harris is a very popular guy, and he's got a good message, you know, and it's a powerful message that Nanaimo has been taken for granted for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And I think they know that, and they see all this stuff happening around them, you know, and you know, the fact of the need for the hospital services, that they are such a central part of the island, that they draw people from all sorts of places, and that people can't go. You know, I mean, people in Nanaimo go either to Victoria or to Vancouver to get their, you know, serious health needs met, whereas they should be able to go where they are.
Right.
And Tony Harris has been leading that charge, you know, his work as a citizen on these committees. You know, he's been right in the middle of it all, and he's got some great cred in Nanaimo. So who knows?
Would you say
where
that
this is
he's
gonna
lit?
go. Yeah, well, if you're woke, you might say that.
Do you think the BC Liberals invested enough in Nanaimo while they were in power to have something to talk about at least?
Well, you know, that's a good question. But I think, you know, with a guy like Tony Harris as their champion, that would be a real wake-up call for all the parties.
Have you met him?
Oh, yeah. No, he's really good.
Yeah, what's his background?
Well, he's like fifth generation. You know, he's been there forever. I think it was Leonard Krogh, when he announced running for mayor, it was Tony Harris that introduced him.
Huh.
So, you know, he's got all, I mean, I think Leonard Krogh used to babysit him. You know.
No way.
So, I mean, you know, he's got this credibility on all sides. I think he's got 600 employees. He's, you know, a number of companies that you know, and good loyalty and respect from his employees. So clearly he's a decent guy that treats people well. And so it looks very positive. You know, this is a real chance.
What would you say is going to happen if we win? I mean, I guess this whole fracas in the speaker's office is kind of playing with stuff too. But I mean, maybe I'll get your opinion on that too. Like, I think personally, if Mr. Plekas was not the speaker, I think there's no guarantee he would vote with us to topple a government or anything. I think he'd either probably still vote NDP or just disappear and not show up for work. I don't know. Mm-hmm. He hasn't really been acting rational lately anyways. And then with that sort of, if we just assume that he's staying there and we won, what do you think that means for, say, January to June of next year?
Yeah,
Or I
it's
guess
a
February
complicated
to June.
thing because, you know, we have this long and positive relationship with Darryl Plekas. You know, he's been part of the caucus. We've been solid, you know. So it's very disorienting for, you know, for many people to see him as the enemy or anything like that, you know.
Right.
And I think, you know, deep down, you know, if you get past some of this unfortunate stuff, you know, there is a connection and a general agreement that we're on the same side generally. So I don't know. It's you know, there are a lot of personalities, egos. A lot of people feel, that they've been betrayed and that kind of thing. And I don't get that part really, because in politics, as Lord, what's his name? Anyways, he said that there are no permanent friends or permanent allies in politics. There are only permanent interests.
Yeah.
Who's Lord Aberdeen just before him? Anyways.
Well, it might be true, though. A lot of people try to act like it isn't, right?
If you're in this business, you really have to get over yourself.
Yeah.
And recognize your interests and work toward your interests.
Right.
And that's kind of fun in politics, because you can have these terrible enemies in a certain vote, and then the next vote you're best friends.
Well, the BC Liberal Party, right? I'm sure I'll have a few enemies in the federal election next year, and right after we'll be buds.
Yeah,
again.
Right here.
Yeah,
Right
so
here,
I'm sitting beside one. Yeah.
No, I don't know if we can be enemies if I don't even have a home in the federal election. We'll see.
We could be frenemies.
Yeah.
But
Well.
that's actually a good segue to something Jordan and I mentioned with you before we got on air here, is in terms of personalities and politics and everything. And I was watching the last Bill Maher of the year last week. And for anybody that watches it, he has a segment called New Rule. And his new rule for the last show of the year was don't talk politics with your family and your friends. It's not worth it. He went off for about 5 minutes and hit a few points. I think everybody here knows them more or less. One of the interesting ones that I hadn't really heard articulated well that he did was that 30, 40 years ago, it was kind of looked at as a private thing, almost like what's under your underpants. You would never ask somebody about what's under their heart, about what they believe in politically. And he said it was kind of nice. He's like, we just talked about barbecues and, but I didn't really think of it. I haven't grown up in that era. So, I mean, that's news to me, right? But the whole era sort of that I've grown up as an adult, it's been everyone's blabbing on Facebook and anywhere you go. But I just kind of wanted to, as a veteran, as a former mayor, get your opinion on the holidays are coming up. What's the rule around the Sullivan household, and have you ever had to break it or?
Well, remember, those are the revolutionaries down there who threw out the British system.
Right.
And the British system says it's a brilliant insight that you have government and you have the opposition. And the opposition is not the enemy. The opposition is actually part of government. And it's an essential part of this tension that we all are part of. And, there is Her Majesty's loyal opposition. And that idea, I think, is much more ingrained in Canada. And I don't think we have as much need of this rule to not speak about politics. And I think it's more genetic for us, or DNA. It's more ingrained.
Well, I think a big part of it is about managing the type of opposition you get, because there's obviously these days a lot of toxic, polarizing nonsense. But I mean, you get into like the right circles of friends who are tolerant of different views and actually want to discuss things, then I don't know, the discussion is really nice. Now, the question for me is, when you have people who just don't talk about it at all naturally, do you try to awaken an interest in politics where it is not desired? It's so weird. When I go back to visit in Kelowna, I realize that my friend groups are very different between like the friends I went to high school with and the friends who I spend time with these days in Vancouver. It seems like more people in Vancouver are more politically aware and want to talk about it between elections. And people in Kelowna are more interested in having a good time, and they'll talk about their families and the things that they're
Conditions
interested
at Big
in.
White.
Yeah, conditions at Big White, it's a big deal. And I don't mean this as an insult to anyone in Kelowna, because it's a lovely place, and there's something to be said about enjoying the good things that you have and not having your head in the clouds all the time. And sometimes I just wonder, I go back and visit my family, should I talk about the things that I've been looking into these days? Or
Yeah. But we wouldn't even have this conversation about the wall. I mean, this is an amazing country where all the major parties are all in agreement that, immigration's a great thing, and we love diversity. We love, those people, whoever they are, God bless them, the immigration people who choose. I just constantly wonder about, wow, what a great idea to bring this person here. Thank you very much. We've got so many incredible people that have come into this country, and I just am amazed at the kind of skills and qualities that they bring. And I think that's pretty broadly felt throughout the country. So we don't have that wall thing going on here, and it's a beautiful thing about our country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think also, too, the economic argument is understood by far more on the right in Canada, that immigrants
don't steal jobs.
They don't steal jobs. Yeah, eventually they pay taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're some of the biggest success stories that we have.
And I think, in BC, so many people are very aware. When you hear this, I respect and honor the territory of the First Nations people, or what, that kind of, standard phrase you make before you speak.
Right.
Yeah, we're all immigrants, and we're here actually on someone else's land, and we should be respectful of that, and we should be very, very grateful for where we are. And, Americans really do believe that's their country, and, when you kind of remind them, you're Europeans.
Yeah.
They don't really, it's not part of their narrative.
Yeah.
You seem to have a really strong interest in Indigenous languages that I've noticed. I think part of it's tied to your interest in stories generally, because you use stories pretty effectively in your leadership race. You talk about the history of British Columbia and the Chinook Wawa language. You also talked about your own story looking for a job when you were disabled, and were looking for generally minimum wage positions and not being able to find them because people didn't want to pay you minimum wage. What do you think is the importance of stories like that in forming like a political narrative?
Yeah, it seems it's a tough one because, we have I think it's 120,000 disabled people who are idle. It's illegal for them to work, and nobody puts it in that way, that describes it that way, that it's illegal for 120,000 people in this community to work, because they cannot produce at the minimum wage in their first try at it. We know that if they did get an opportunity and did get a chance to really learn their work and whatever, they would be producing at more than the minimum wage, and they do well. And no economist seems, I've looked around all the research that I can find, nobody's actually wanted to take this on, as to what happens to the people who aren't producing at the minimum wage. What happens to them? They're the casualties of the minimum wage. And it's just not very comfortable for people to even, if I'm an economist and I want to get my Nobel Prize, I'm not going to be talking to people about how you should pay disabled people less money than, what people call a dignified wage. And yet it has been so horrible to people, and it's just caused so much pain and suffering and bad, self-esteem and this kind of stuff. That and I bring it up, and I get accused of wanting to denigrate disabled people. And if they look at my resume, they will see that I've done everything but that, and that my own personal story has, the minimum wage has harmed me a lot. And fortunately, I was able to get out of it because I did something illegal, which is accept less than minimum wage. I didn't even know it was illegal at the time, you know. But, fortunately, I did that, and I was able to then figure out my own skills and network enough and figure out what the working world's about. It's not a welfare program where, things are given to you. It's not an entitlement program. Work is very different. You have to produce, and you have to be useful, and you have to not be a drag on the system. And that's something that takes a while to learn. And once you do, then your life is so much better.
Yeah, watching the reactions to that when I heard you announce the policy. And just for anyone who's not familiar with it, what Sam suggested was to have the minimum wage essentially abolished for people who are on disability payments and welfare. Was that it?
Yeah. It's various different options, but the easiest one would be to say everybody who's on disability welfare stays with their all their benefits, but they're allowed to go to an employer and make whatever agreement they want. There should be nobody standing in the way of them making any contract that they want.
Yeah, so the freedom of contract combined with keeping benefits. And anyways, the interesting thing I found when I was looking at that debate was that obviously the people who want the high minimum wage, it always comes out of a position of compassion where everyone wants the poor to be able to do better or people with disabilities to do better.
Right.
But I heard this one interesting thing said once that it's easy to have a heart for the poor, but it can be a lot harder to have a mind for the poor. And so, but at the same time, like we want to be able to have a mind and say that we're making evidence-based policies, but we're emotional creatures. And so we really have to start with stories so often. And so I found it interesting that you were able to take this, the overarching opinion on minimum wage, which is grounded in compassion, and you were able to kind of shift the focus onto your own idea using compassion yourself by using your own story. Yeah. But then also backing it up with, what an economist would think about the issue. And I think that's really the best way to use stories when you're trying to get policies through is you got to start with them. You have to lead with them.
Well, I wish, Paul, in politics, we would all have to have a version of the Hippocratic Oath. Above all, do no harm. Whatever legislation you bring in should not hurt people. And right now, minimum wage harms people. And it harms the people that have no voice. And so, it helps the people that are vocal. And it's a real travesty what's going on and how nobody is saying anything. And, in the 1990s, they brought in a rule in the NDP time that everyone had to make minimum wage. And overnight, all of these the sheltered workshops and the innovative employment opportunities died. They shut their doors and sent everyone home. And they've been at home since then. And they don't make a lot of noise because they're people that don't have much of a voice. And I think they've been really poorly served by economists who don't want to touch that one, And you find so many economists are okay about raising the minimum wage, which is quite an interesting phenomenon. But they don't want to talk about the existing casualties of that system.
So how do you get people to break the silence? I'm speaking as somebody who's talked about my share of unpopular policy positions when they come up, and I don't think that they're actually grounded in evidence. And sometimes I'll wait for other people to talk about them first, and nobody will really talk about it. And sometimes if I go first, other people will follow. Other times I just won't stand up and talk about it, and I don't know.
See, I think that economics should be a required subject of elementary school or high school. Everyone should be grounded in these very, very simple ideas, and we'd all be a lot better off. I remember when I was quite shocked about the planning departments in the cities, and I went to the planning school, and I looked at the curriculum, and I was shocked to find out that you could graduate from planning school without ever having taken a course in economics.
Oh.
So, these are people who are making serious decisions about things like house prices, what will ultimately affect the price of housing. And 50 years we've gone by with people with no idea of economics making policies.
What courses are they required to take?
Well, now there is one course, and I believe that it has elements of economics in it, but it's not an economics course, but it does. So I think it's being changed, it's being improved. And I hope, it still is a serious problem.
So what courses are actually in the required
Well, yeah,
content,
this is
though?
another problem. Okay, so
I mean, my conservative bias would say that they're probably moving towards a more social justice lens instead of an economic framework.
Yeah, so it's not a lot on infrastructure or engineering, which used to be so critical for planners, that they would really understand infrastructure and how that affects, where we build. So it's not a lot of infrastructure or engineering involved at all, if at all. Not much of economics, and the real thing is process, going through processes. How can you engage more citizens, And, I remember as a city councillor many years ago, and we were going out to South Vancouver to deal with the neighborhood. The neighborhood was going to tell us what they wanted.
Marpole, I guess.
Yeah, and it was in Sunset area. And so I remember just on the way out the door, I thought I'd just look at the demographics. Whoa, very young and very much ethnic minority groups. So we got out to the meeting, and all of them were old white people. I said, whoa, this is the community that we're talking to here. And the planners were all excited. Yeah, this is a community. We put out our ad, and here they are. I said, but these don't look like the community I just read about, And they said, no, we put the ad out, and all the old white guys that were really afraid came in, and they seemed very concerned, And so, and this is our planning, the way we do planning, So it's the opposite of economics, where economics will often, it's aggregated, statistical. Here's your statistical person, your statistical citizen. And you will work to make sure these faceless people that you've never met and you probably will never meet, but statistically that they exist and that they're important. And that's not what planning does, at least in the past, up till now. It's about getting the people who have the loudest voices and who are usually the most afraid of the future coming out and messing it up for the younger people.
Yeah.
And I remember through the 90s, we had this standard speech. Anytime somebody came saying, hey, I got a way to provide more housing, I say, yo, that's great. And we put it to the public hearing. And all these old guys come and yell and scream and cry, And we had this standard speech. I made it several times. If you keep voting against and resisting housing, you're going to make your neighborhoods unaffordable. And just a few years ago, I got a chance to, speak with some of them. Hey, remember those meetings that you always opposed housing? Now, do you see what's happened? And they said, no, it's not us. It's the Chinese. I said, you scoundrels, you just screwed a whole generation of people and you're blaming it on the Chinese, Yeah. So this whole, it's disgusting to see, how that conversation has gone. And, but hopefully we'll get through it.
Yeah, you had a really funny point in your video about densifying housing in Vancouver, and you were talking about the myth of Chinese people making housing more expensive. And you said that Chinese people love buying expensive SUVs and expensive vehicles, but you don't see that price going up at all.
Yeah.
It's just the housing. It's because the supply is so restricted.
Yeah, no, it's such a popular myth. And, we have people in the media who have figured out that it's really good for clicks. They get really good clicks. So it's very subversive and corrosive. Social media has been wonderful in many ways, but what it's done is it's made it very clear as to who's reading what.
Right.
And then even the sort of mainstream media have figured that out, and it's now twisting those the products that they put out.
Mm-hmm.
What? Well, we got you here. We're coming up on a year with since Wilkinson's won, I guess, in a little bit. How would you say?
He won only in 2018. I thought it was.
Yeah, but
February.
we're coming up. It's December. Next year's
Yeah,
2019.
okay, never mind. Keep going.
It's a technicality.
Yeah, we're getting there. But how do you think the first year's gone? How do you think he's grown as a leader, and what have you seen?
Well, what he's done is he's really kept the caucus together. So we're solid, and that's thanks to his ability to, get so many people to support him. I was quite shocked at the people, the breadth, the variety of MLAs that endorsed him,
Yeah.
from very rural, small town to urban,
Right.
and it really went right the whole gamut. So he's shown himself.
Me as well.
Yeah, well, see, he's been able to even you, and so that's really positive, and so as long as we're together and we're marching together and going in the same direction, that's a very important achievement.
Do you think that? I guess we'll get whatever we want to say. Nostradamus, reading the tea leaves. What do you smell an election coming in 2019, or do you think this thing holds together for another Christmas?
What I know in politics is whatever you think is going to happen probably won't. I'm always surprised.
Right.
At even this speaker issue.
Yeah.
Who would have ever predicted this?
Yeah, I know.
So things happen. And what I know is that we are well placed as a solid, cohesive caucus. And I think we've learned our lesson that we didn't lose because we were weak in the rural areas. We lost because we're weak in the urban areas. Yeah. And we have to do a way better job of reaching out and hopefully making a case to the urban conservative party, i.e. the Green Party, that actually we do represent their interests.
And step one, not be hostile to ride-sharing technologies and even basic technology.
That'd be very helpful, yeah.
Yeah. When did you become a history buff? Because you have, like I said before, you've got a lot of interest in history.
Yeah, that happened after I retired from politics, or as my wife often helpfully reminds me, I was thrown out of politics after being in City Hall. And so I really wanted to know what went wrong, like what happened, why was I unable to take on the two issues that were most important to me: housing, house prices, eco-density, ecology, economy, and then the CAST program, the drug initiative, where I was trying to deal with the price of housing, which 10, 12 years ago I thought was too high. And the overdose deaths, we had 100 people a year, which I thought was outrageous. And we needed to drive that number down. So I took on those two issues and completely failed. I have to be very honest that I moved forward in important ways, but didn't get where I needed to go at all. And I wanted to know why. And so I remember thinking, geez, I went into City Hall, got into the mayor's office thinking that was where the power was. And when I got there, I thought, this is not where the power is. The power is actually out there. And then when I followed it through, I found the powerful people, the most powerful of all, are philosophers. That was kind of shocking to me. And then it's the philosophers who set the boundaries of where civilized people can act. And we all it's so deeply ingrained in us, the boundaries they have set. And then we have the other people, the professors and the journalists and the storytellers, who then make us aware of those boundaries. And so what I was fighting against was narratives. That if you want to change things seriously in a fundamental way, you have to fight the narrative battle. There are narratives that we are so ingrained in our psyche that we have to go this way unless someone undermines that narrative and changes the narrative and makes it possible for us to go in a new way. So I realized that, John Ralston Saul said every polity, every political entity needs myths. And the best myth makers by far are the United States. Their myths are false. When you go into most of their myths, they're actually not true.
Manifest destiny.
Well, Paul Revere was shacked up with his girlfriend in a different city. He didn't say the British are coming, the British are coming. Daniel Frock and all these guys were slave traders and, pretty nasty people. And, so these myths, George Washington owned 600 slaves and Thomas Jefferson had several hundred slaves and, talking about freedom and dignity and all this stuff.
Right.
So we need myths, and myths are the stories that back up and support the direction we want to go. So I started looking into our history to find our myths, and the beautiful thing about the myths that I discovered is they're actually true. So this is a bonus. You get to have the stories that support where you're going, and they happen to be true,
right.
That our founding sort of governor in many people's estimation, James Douglas, was part black, and he was married to an Aboriginal woman, and they spoke French at home, This is like an incredible beginning for a multicultural society. And the guys that brought in the racism, absolutely, were the unions. And the very first labor organization, the Working Men's Protective Association, changed its name later to the Anti-Chinese Association. Ooh, that's a pretty good indication of what they think.
Wonder what they do.
Yeah. And they were behind the head tax and all these things. I considered voting against the apology because I didn't belong to that faction of people, but I thought, that'd probably be a little bit disruptive, too much even for me.
Yeah.
So I went with it, but if you look into these myths, these stories, real historical stories that I would think should be myths, it'll teach us that our society, British Columbia, exists because of our focus on resource development. Hudson Bay Company, the Honorable Hudson Bay Company was the government. It wasn't a fur trade company. It was a government, a legal government in western part of the world here. They developed their own language, Chinookwawah. Originally, Columbia was below the 49th parallel. The very first capital was Vancouver, not this Vancouver, but Vancouver, Washington now it's called. And it wasn't until the border treaty when, the government in disarray and weakness gave away all of that. And so we had to go north and create a new Columbia and a new Vancouver. And it's quite a remarkable story, which you can't even read in school textbooks. So I think we've done a great disservice to the young people to not tell the real story of British Columbia. So I'm trying to tell it.
So what was the story, you think, behind you said your failures with housing and caste? And caste is, just for anyone who's not familiar with it, giving, is it opioids or?
Sure, or any, you identify any place where a person has become an addicted person and you make sure no criminal market ever established. As soon as you find an addicted person, you give them a prescription and you keep the criminal element out of it and you medicalize it and you make sure that people have the support they need while they're figuring out how to, get their life together.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think was the narrative running against that?
Well, it's quite remarkable that, this prohibition is a left-wing innovation, and yet a lot of right-wing people think that they're supposed to be supporting it because it's a right-wing thing. No. Just look at a little bit of history, and you'll find that this came from the left. The right, the Honorable Hudson Bay Company, really had what they practice was what we would call harm reduction. They said there's no way we're going to make a law that's going to cost any money to enforce. And if we do find a problem, if a problem does manifest itself, we're going to look at it, figure it out, and manage it into submission. One off. But we're not going to make any draconian laws about people's behavior. So really it was a kind of a libertarian type of a thing. And I also learned that they say that socialized medicine came from Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan was the heart of the Hudson Bay Company territory. And there's a paper written, a very fascinating paper that says the reason that it came out of Saskatchewan is because that was where the Hudson Bay Company was. And the Hudson Bay Company offered free education and medical to all of the people connected to it, its government. And the old guys, when they got free medical, they said, yeah, it was always free when we were young. It wasn't until Canada came around that we lost our medical, and now we're getting it again, So, you can see that the right in Western Canada was the place that free or, publicly supplied universal medical and education came from. And we should be accepting that legacy and owning it.
That is a story that you never hear, or at least I have never heard.
There you go.
Me too.
You heard it right here.
What do you have personally here? Just before I guess we're getting near the end. Time flies. I can't believe we've already been at it for an hour and a bit. Mm-hmm. Do you have any fun plans coming up for the holidays?
Well, I'm going to Hawaii. I'm going to Honolulu because that's where the Hudson Bay Company had a diplomatic office. So there's this incredible connection between British Columbia and Hawaii. The Kanaka population, a third of Vancouver was Hawaiian at one point. I mean, the original Vancouver, Washington. It was a major source. A lot of the Hawaiians, when the Americans took over the old territory of Columbia, where British Columbia was founded, they made these rules that you couldn't, if you were black, which they also considered Hawaiians were black, you had to leave. They didn't allow black people to live in Oregon. There was actually a rule against it. They had at one point the lash law, which is if you were black and you were living there, you would be lashed every 6 months until you left.
What?
So this is like the kind of attitude that came in and displaced, Governor James Douglas was the governor from Vancouver, Washington now. And he was running the whole territory, and they brought in this law saying that he'd have to be lashed, So it was kind of interesting. And so a lot of the Hawaiians and the black people moved north, where they had a much more, they had a welcoming environment, where James Douglas actually went to black people in San Francisco and said, your guys are getting discriminated against, come on up. We'll be free and live dignified lives here. So 600 of them came up to Victoria. And it wasn't until after they got rid of Douglas and started bringing in this kind of virulent racism driven by the left that most of the black people left and went back to the U.S. after the Civil War.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Can I give you a wicked dinner recommendation?
Yeah.
Duke's at the Outrigger Waikiki.
Is this the non sequitur that you're famous for?
This is it. This is her.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I mean, it's still Hawaii still.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. Is this in Hawaii?
Yeah, Duke's is in Hawaii.
Oh, it's not a non sequitur. Oh,
this is really good for him, actually. He's on top.
Yeah, I'm on my game.
You're really on. Whoa, thank you. Whoa.
But
Dukes.
Yeah, you got to reserve it at least 2 days in advance, but I highly recommend it.
Well, the Hudson Bay Company, which was the government of British Columbia, used to lease the land off the royal family. And I'm going to go to that land and check it out.
No way.
For when we bring back after the resistance is successful. we'll bring back that piece of property and restore it.
This sounds like when my property law professor in law school told me that he went on a vacation to see this one place where this really famous property law case had started.
Yeah.
And nerd.
Well, David Douglas, who was the great botanist, we call Douglas fir after him. It's not named after James Douglas. He died in Alaska, and then Captain Cook died in Alaska, and he was the guy that sparked it all off and one of the reasons why we're here and we speak English.
Oh, I've got a non-political question to end this all off, because we don't need to talk about politics all the time. Tell us a little bit about the Disability Foundation that you started.
Yeah, okay, non sequitur. Okay, let's...
Jordan's doing my job.
I'm learning.
So what I did was I broke my neck in a skiing accident, became a quadriplegic, and went through 7 years of kind of miserable life, and eventually, suicidal and everything. And eventually I came through that and I started writing goals. Okay, what would I do, if I said disability will never be an excuse for, that was one of the things that I decided. I will never let disability be an excuse for not doing anything. So that's, I just set my goals. I want to go sailing. I wanted to play music. I wanted to do all these things. And so I worked and found other people that wanted similar goals, and we set up some societies and created these things for quality of life. And, we created these things that are really still very active now. I don't have much to do with them anymore, but they're on their own and creating all these benefits for many people. And that's how that all happened. And it's a real pleasure for me to see all these things going on and to think that I had a role in getting them going. That's what got me my Order of Canada. So that's the only, I didn't get any money for it, but they gave me a little button that I can wear.
Yeah. Is there anything that people watching or listening can do to be involved in the organization at all?
Oh yeah, no, they're constantly needing volunteers. They're constantly needing money. It's something that shouldn't naturally exist. You won't find these organizations anywhere else because government won't support quality of life. Right. It'll give, basic life, and, if you're dying, they'll
spam.
They'll, if you're homeless, they'll kind of, find a way to, get you some housing. But no one will help you go sailing.
Yeah.
Government's not going to give you any money to go sailing, or play music or gardening or go hiking in the wilderness, is all the things that we figured out how to do. And so it's all about private support, and they need tons of volunteers, lots of money. It's expensive to do this stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so that's one thing. I'll just tell you one other thing I'm doing, which is very needing a volunteer, is I set up this group, and what we've done is we've gone into these old documents of Vancouver, all those city council minutes, and all the old letters and journals from the old days. And we've now completed all the city council minutes from 1886 to 1893. We've got them all online. People can go to transcribimus.ca and they can read all the old council minutes from those early days. And we're now working on 1893. And we've got these volunteers typing up all these documents and putting them online for free. And if you have ancestors that were in the early days of Vancouver, you can go in and search, find their names, and see all the bad things they did.
Listen up, history buffs.
I actually might have a friend interested in that. I'll have to let
They
them
do
know.
it from their own home, and they can do it during the commercial breaks.
Yeah.
Just go and type in another few parts of the council minutes.
For sure.
Well, that's a more wholesome way to end an episode than ripping on John Horgan or even boosting up Andrew Wilkinson's tires. As much as we love to do that here, both of those, it's nice to end on something that we can all agree on.
Right on.
Yeah.
Thank you for you guys doing what you do. You're having a big impact, and you're really making a difference. So thank you.
Thanks a lot. We do it for the joy. I think both of us, just for the fun of it, and to try and have a little bit of a difference.
Well, we're lucky to have you. I mean, this would not exist. I mean, there's so much lack of knowledge about what's going on, and you guys are really doing something I don't think anybody else is doing.
Thank you very much. And
That's
we'd be remiss if we didn't mention John and Nicole as well.
Absolutely, yeah. John and his business here setting up the studio for us.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
No, it's a huge gift to the community.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that does it. Another episode of Majority BC is in the books. We thank Sam Sullivan, the 38th Mayor of Vancouver, the current MLA for Vancouver Falls Creek, and just an all-around good guy for coming by. So thank you very much, Sam, and Merry Christmas to you. And if we don't get another episode out before Christmas, Merry Christmas to our listeners as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Sam.
Congratulations. Bye now.
Thank you.